Welcome to the Nerd Journey Podcast. Our goal is to help you, the technology professional, accelerate your career progression, increase your job satisfaction, and be more effective in your existing role.
We want to bring listeners like you the career advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers.
I'm John White, at VJourneyman on Twitter, sharing co-host duties with Nick Cordy, at NetworkNerd_.
We're two former IT operations guys who have moved on to pre-sales roles with technology vendors. We have our opinions, but we also like to highlight the journeys of others and see what we can learn from them.
We'd also like to ask for your feedback to make this a conversation, not a one-way broadcast. Email us at nerdjourneypodcast@gmail.com or DM us at nerdjourney on Twitter. So come join us on our nerd journey.
Let's take a trip. Episode 302. How do you know when to stop doing something you love or something that you felt has been really successful? Amy Lewis would tell you that decisions like these require us to be intentional. Intentional about putting something down so we can pick something else up. Amy is the director of enterprise marketing at GitHub. She's an unapologetic marketer, and she was once a Geek Whisperer. If you missed part 1 of our discussion with Amy in episode 301, we talked about her early career in publishing and a shift she made to do marketing for a technology vendor. We talked about what storytelling is, a little bit about product marketing, and why Amy is constantly seeking to assist other people on the soccer field and in all areas of her life. This week in part 2 of our discussion, we're going to talk about the genesis of the Geek Whisperers podcast. Why did it start? What was its purpose? How did that change, and why did it come to an end? Amy's also going to weigh in on layoffs in our industry and advice for people who have been impacted. And then she'll talk to us about landing in people management and what that's been like for her. Let's get you to part 2 of our discussion with Amy Lewis. I think we have to go there now since we're talking about podcasts. I want to hear how the Geek Whisperers got started because John and I have listened to it. I found this in 2016, 2017 for the first time and started listening through it, and I couldn't stop. It was a great influence on us. So tell us a little bit about the secret sauce and how you got started and why you kept doing it.
I think you all are going to think at the end of this that I'm either the luckiest person alive or I'm just kind of, sometimes I do feel like I'm walking through a movie set. I think I'm somebody who makes my own luck, right? Like I see a circumstance and I just jump in. But in this case, I'm not going to discount good fortune. John, Matt, and I were all running very similar programs. So we knew of each other. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it's been so long, I'm pretty sure John and Matt had been talking about a podcast because they knew each other better. It was at VMworld. Matt Broberg and I were standing next to each other because the keynote hall was full. And so we were in one of the overflow areas and fate just had us sit next to each other. I'm also a person who has been asked not to sit beside many friends and family in church services because in the South, as we call it, the church giggles. I am person who finds humor in things, and boy, when I get started, it's hard to stop. So Matt and I would definitely not be permitted to sit next to one another in any religious service because we got essentially the church giggles, and it was not, I'm sure, funny, and I'm sure we irritated people, but like it was just, we had a shared language just like immediately. We had not really met each other before, and we just clicked. I mean, he is like family for me. So conversation started. Again, we wanted to talk shop. They both had podcast experience. John and Matt both did. And John just had such a good editorial eye and vision. He's like, this could be a podcast. I don't even remember like one of us, all of us, somebody came up with it. I don't even remember any of that either. Everything just kind of disappeared into a group effort. It was magical. And I can say that like full stop. Like it's not, we're not like, it's not like Oasis or what was it recently? Jane's Addiction, right? Like we're no fighting on stage, no scary band stories. Like it was just this amazing synergy. And when we first started, we really did talk shop. It was a lot of influence marketing. It was about the programs that we were running because it was a time where influence marketing in a B2B setting was unheard of, which is funny now, right? Everybody knows what an influencer is, but we were there way back when. And then there was a moment where we realized so many people were hungry for hearing stories of career, and we decided to pivot. It's a passion for all of us. And we started to tell the stories that people couldn't kind of get another way, ask questions that other people might not be able to ask, share stories that we'd overheard or connections that we had. Because of the show notes, I had reason to go back and look through the episodes. And I spent some time today looking through, and it almost brought me to tears. We did what we hoped to do, create a body of work that we hoped would serve a community we really loved and were proud to be part of.
I remember you saying on one of the episodes that you used to listen to those when you couldn't sleep.
I put myself to sleep. So sorry for anybody listening to this.
I can edit that out if you want.
I'm an open book on that one. This is the new Calm app now. Sorry, listeners.
When you do something like that, where you get together with the right people, you pivot to something maybe different than you had imagined, and it's very successful, eventually things have to stop. So how do you decide to lay something down that you enjoy a lot and is really successful? I think that is something that a lot of us will face in life.
It's something we were actually pretty proud of. We found a natural kind of episode number and year number to end on, and we kind of aimed toward closure. It's really hard to produce weekly content. And I had this conversation with my kid at dinner tonight. At the time, I was also food blogging. I was traveling a lot. I honestly don't know how the three of us, the two of them did a lot of work. I feel like I got to show up. I helped on the editorial side. They did, full disclosure, they were both just wizards at the practical application side. They would edit and they would write show notes, but I don't know how any of us, it's like we all had busy lives and we're all doing a lot of things. And I don't honestly know. I really didn't sleep. So I really did need to listen to my own podcast to go to sleep because that was about the only time it was happening. But I think there's great honor. We didn't want to fade away. We wanted to end strong, and we wanted to do it with intention. And I think that was just that was a shared agreement with the three of us. So we stayed in while we were in, and we all agreed when we were out. And it just kind of speaks, I think, to the synergy of the group.
Was that a decision very early on, or like after you got started?
You know how this is. When you start something, you have no idea how it's going to end. And we didn't know if it was just going to be for ourselves and our own entertainment. I have to tell you, I'm humbled when I think about it. I've got little kind of chill bumps. It was amazing the amount of people that I think the podcast really mattered to. It just really meant a lot to all of us. But that was not necessarily the case day one for sure. So we didn't know what was going to happen from day to day. We just really enjoyed talking to each other, and it made sense to record it. And then suddenly it became a thing. And then there is some pressure, and it was hard. We had hard days, and we had days where we were tired and really had to gut it out. And we really kind of found our groove. I don't know. It just had a natural life cycle. It would be hard even with retrospect to know. So I know we didn't know where we were going to end when we started, but we knew when it was time. And I think all of us feel really good about that.
The decision, I think you said the phrase was to not fade away.
That's right.
To not fade out. It's like retire this particular thing while it's still good.
That's exactly. And it's something I would coach people on. It's okay to put something down because it means you get to pick something up. I have mentored a lot of women around maternity leave and, how they bring family into their career lives. And in some ways, it's the easiest time to counsel them because having to go on mat leave makes you have to make hard decisions. Your life is fundamentally different before and after. And I use that example with a lot of people, even if they're not. Because, of course, the immediate pushback is, Amy, I can't put anything down. And I use that example of like, if this was your case, you wouldn't say that to me. You would choose something to put down so you could pick something else up. And I really believe in that. I know it's oversimplified, but I think until you make that commitment to symbolically put something down, you don't make space to pick something else up.
Yeah. Laying it down and being okay with it.
Intention. Yeah, I think it's so important. It's a topsy-turvy world, and we often feel like things are happening to us. I am watching our industry just get obliterated, and my heart goes out to so many folks who are having career choices made for them. I have certainly been part of workforce reduction. I have walked those walks right alongside. So we have to, where we can, bring intention into our career and life and direction. And some of that is saying, like, these are my boundaries, and this is what I will and won't do. And this is what I like and what I don't like. And this is what I'm going to put down so that I can very mindfully pick something else up. It's hard to learn a new skill if you're so exhausted. It's hard all this is hard. So it's important to figure out what you're going to stop doing so you can start doing something else.
That is such a great point. And you had a couple pieces just kind of, I could almost hear them like clicking in my brain. It's like, if you're doing things that are valuable, almost by definition, they are not easy. They are probably difficult. So if you want to continue to be valuable and increase your value, and you're trying to pick up something else that is also difficult, the idea that you are just going to maintain everything else in your life that is also difficult is almost laughable.
It is. And the thing is, if someone who wasn't you said they were going to do that, you would be like, hold, right? Like, again, there's an analogy, and easy, if somebody were weightlifting and they were at their max and they're like, but I'm going to pick another thing up, or no, that is a torn muscle just waiting to happen. And it's so clear, but we do this to ourselves all the time. I'm really a big fan of when we can put some structure. It's okay, even if somebody's like, Amy, that's fake. It's okay. It's okay to pretend. I had this conversation. My kid is a font of podcast fodder. She's like, I don't want a desk job. And I was like, we call it knowledge worker. But she wants something finite. And I miss that from publishing. There was a book and I could stop. When I was in the real editorial side of publishing, I had a physical printed object and I could take a breath and go on to the next one. And then when I moved into the online marketing portion, it's the rock up the hill. I've been Sisyphus ever since, right? Just push up the rock. So even if it's fake, we have to create moments of celebration and endpoints. And this is the same concept, which again makes tons of sense to us in all other aspects of our lives, but somehow we burn ourselves out in career, particularly in technology, because we are the ultimate. Like I said, the joy is there's always something new, but we're the ultimate push the rock up the hill, because what's our endpoint? Like, the pixels don't end. Where's the edge of the internet?
Yeah, add working from home on top of that, and you get a formula for making it difficult to stop.
Right. So I think it's okay, even if someone out there, and I can feel, you can see, I've had these conversations before. I feel the pushback through the wires, and you have to choose for yourself. Like, I strongly recommend it. It is good for mental health. It's good for longevity. It's good for all the things. Decide where some of your parameters are. Decide what wins look like. Decide what the outside edge looks like. And decide very firmly, like, be brave, be bold, put something down to pick something up.
One of my extended teammates made this analogy. It was like, I only have so many tokens to spend, right?
Yes.
It's finite. So if you have a token per hour of the day or per hour of the week, some of them are going to be consumed by sleep. Some of them are going to be consumed by family. Don't think that you just have this infinite and endless pot of tokens. Like, you're always borrowing. And you said something there which kind of made me think, like, if you're not making a choice will be made for you.
That's right.
Right? Sometimes it's your body that will make the choice for you. Like, oh,
That's
we are
right.
going to, slow down and stop working now. Right? You are going to have a breakdown. Physical, mental, emotional, whatever. Like, if you push it to the limit, something will break. Just like lifting weights, right?
It's so true. It's so true. Our best work doesn't come under duress. It comes in those quiet moments. I mean, there's the reason, you got your best idea in the shower because you stop thinking about it, right? The same applies to our careers. And it's very freeing. And again, I think this really applies to those who may be listening, who are in transition and thinking about what they're going to do next. And you're right. It is not fun when the choice is taken from you. So the only thing you can do is think of what your next choice is, right? Is it that you're going to reskill? Is it that you're going to intentionally take a break? That was hard for me. So I can't say I took this good advice of really kind of truly taking time off. I'm an end-to-end person. But when I got the opportunity between roles, one of the best things I did for myself in the last few kind of transitions is I made it part of my negotiation. When I got the offer, I wanted some intentional time, and I'd had some pre-planned things. It sort of worked out that way, but I've learned that can be, you can give something up to get that, right? Like part of a negotiation between jobs can be like, I need a break before I start. How long is reasonable until I can start? So I encourage people to think about those different things of what they can do to put the game back in their hands and stop feeling so played. Because it's hard. I mean, that's a hard weight to come out from underneath.
Are there other ways that people in that situation, while we're on the topic, if someone listening has been riffed or laid off, struggling to find a job, what are some ways you've found to get past the hurt, angst, maybe even shame of that event?
The first thing I think is, if you think that other people don't hurt and that you're broken because you do hurt, just hear me say it stinks. It always stinks. It is painful grief. Don't try to power through that. Write it down, say it out loud, talk to people. But sometimes just the very act of acknowledging and saying, that is terrible and I feel terrible and that makes me feel terrible, is one of the first things to kind of get through it. My whole division was laid off, and we were a very small division, and we knew it was coming. And it's still, the day the phone call comes, whenever you know that it's happening, is terrible. And I've had so many conversations with folks. Again, so many of the industry giants are in the process of this right now. So many people we know are going through this. Know you're not alone, and know that you're not weak, bad, or failed. And this is not the end. Every single story, there's a turnaround story. I see this over and over again. I'm a part of a few alumni Facebook groups, and I'm watching this happen. And I really appreciate the folks that are coming through and telling stories and saying there's life after this company. It will get better. But like with any grief process, don't try to make it be better immediately. It's absolutely the first step is just acknowledge this really is terrible. And it feels terrible. It feels terrible. And it is going to knock your confidence. It's going to feel bad. It does feel bad because at its root, a choice was made that you didn't get to participate in. And that is terrible.
It's interesting how we people who are do a lot of technical work or have a lot of technical knowledge can discount the effect of our own human emotions. And we expect ourselves to react to facts rather than allow ourselves the grace to react emotionally, as if oh, I know the facts, this emotional reaction doesn't make any sense. And now there's something wrong with me for feeling that way, right? And it just starts spiraling instead of thinking to ourselves oh, my body has to go through this process. I have to go through this emotional process too. It's not just, the facts winning out over everything.
And this is going to sound, again, my brain is a crazy place full of analogies. So this one will sound like a leap, but I was thinking about this recently when people are talking fearfully about the rise of AI and generative AI tools. One thing that I read that I thought was so interesting, it's but code doesn't disappear because it's deterministic, whereas human language is non-deterministic. And I've been thinking about this so much. The analogy or the connection point here is, I think so many of us go to what is safe and predictable. The beauty of technology is the zeros and ones, is the predictability, is the deterministic, right? And so it is easy because if our passion is that and what is predictable, it's even double unsettling to have a very illogical thing happen. And in some ways, it's why humans will always outpace or always be able to use the tool that is Gen AI, in my opinion, and not be undone by it, because our humanity and judgment and ability to make rational choices in seemingly irrational spaces, it's what's always going to, humans are always going to win, in my opinion. They're always going to win. And these things are tools. So even though there's safety and comfort, like a security blanket, the thing that makes us more able to compete is also the thing that's going to make us hurt. And such good advice, again, from another buddy of mine recently. And I just love this. The way he put it is sometimes you just can't square it. Meaning, as people who live in a world of logic and deterministic outcomes, we have to say out loud, this does not make sense. This does not make sense. And even that, I think, can be, I can't square it. I can't make this make sense. And that alone can be very freeing and help you get to the next thing, which is like, this makes no sense. So I'm going to do what makes sense for me. That's what I really hope for the folks who are going through it right now. People are reskilling. People are applying for jobs in different ways. I think our industry will rebound. I lived through .com when I was in .bomb when I was in publishing, and we're living through quite a bounce now. The jobs are going to appear in different ways. I don't want to say the golden era of tech has ended. It hasn't. It is an era that a lot of us went through together. There's a lot of shared memories, and there's a lot of incredible innovation. How work will change. The jobs that are available will change. But I am an optimist, and I don't think it's over. I think we have to decide what's next.
Yeah, it's such a great way to think about things, right? That there is immediate short-term pain. There's just no getting around that. If you've gone through a job loss, there's no way to spin that, right? It's a rough and horrible thing to go through. It can be destabilizing. It can, as you said, like hurt your self-confidence. It even just destabilize like one's identity.
Yes.
Right? So there's just no getting around that. I don't know how easy it is to see the macro view in that situation. But sometimes, when you're in a hole, it just takes somebody else to go, the hole is not bottomless. There's nobody who's like making the hole deeper. And here, let me help you understand how to get out of the hole. Sometimes you just need to lean on an outside perspective.
I agree.
Or even just offload that, like, I need somebody to tell me like, hey, everything's going to be okay. So I can just trust that. And then that'll help me keep on going.
May that be, an outcome of this podcast for anybody who's listening, to know that I think that all three of us are in sharp agreement that that's true. And I would encourage anybody listening who has the good fortune of being employed, reach out to somebody. Undoubtedly, we all know somebody who needs that hand right now, and you might not have a job to offer them. But even just saying, I hear you, it happened to me, and it does absolutely stink. I had the benefit of that when it happened to me. And it somehow felt better. We're not in a generation, my parents' generation, they were like, my gosh, Amy, why are you changing jobs ever? Like, it scared them to death. Forget the cult and the English teacher problems. They were like, why are you changing jobs? And we know that, like, I feel like Gen X on down, like, that's just the lot we inherited, like it or not. And so we all have an experience here. So if you're somebody who's feeling okay right now, I would just challenge all of us to reach out to somebody who you think may not be. Check in on them and give them that encouragement, because give away something, because you're going to need it someday. Nobody rides this ride without hitting the whammies, at some point.
Such good advice. Yeah. And that, honestly, that has been the focus of a lot of our podcasts lately, to try and help people in that scenario, because we keep seeing it. And you're geek whispering to us. I think it's awesome.
Once a geek whisperer.
That's right. Well, you were talking about finding out what to do next, and somebody in a maybe not great job situation or no job situation. But sometimes we have to find out what we want to do next for ourselves, and we end up targeting management, people management.
Mm-hmm.
And you did that as part of your story. So I'd love to hear a little bit, or we'd love to hear a little bit about why you chose to go into people leadership and maybe how you've helped other people at the same time determine what they want to do next.
I love this question. In some ways, it feels an inevitable part of my career. When I was still back in publishing and I was overrun and beside myself, I invented an internship. It was an unpaid internship to start with. And then I convinced them to help me pay minimum wage to these folks because I had a publishing internship in North Carolina. So boy, that was a hot commodity. And I'm like, I will do the work to get people real work and teach them. And that's how I could do the quid pro quo initially of I forget the exact number I had. It was 7 or 8. All but 2 went into publishing afterwards. So I launched careers. I think that's probably where I first got a taste for connecting people with opportunity. These were incredibly bright people. So I, in no way, shape, or form, get full credit. But like, I knew how to open a door. And I really always believe in opening a door where I can. And I've had the opportunity with several of these folks to kind of stay connected, which is amazing. So that was probably my first hit of the dopamine, if you will. When I was when I was formally a people manager, I became a director and a people manager at the same time. And it was sort of meteoric after that point because I had a habit of inheriting teams because I like to manage people and I can see connective tissue where there may not be. So in an org chart, one wants it to be neat. But if, say, a manager is asked to leave or there's just been a change of circumstance or for some reason, somehow that has become my other superpower is I have inherited a lot of situations. And again, for good reasons and not good reasons. And the biggest running joke, and I still work with this person today. I went on vacation when I was at my startup, Solid Fire, and came back and it had inherited an entire team and my CMO had hired somebody. And he just delivered the news. Welcome back, Amy. You now also run field marketing, and I hired somebody while you were gone.
How long was your vacation?
Yeah, it's like, I'm never going on vacation again. It turned out amazing, but ... What I tell people about people management is what I was told. It is hard. It is very different from being an IC. You do not have to be, in fact, in some ways you shouldn't be better at the IC work than they are. Quickly, whoever reports to you will be better at their job than you. And that is the way it should be. You should help them be better at their job, but that does not mean necessarily on-point expertise. They are going to be better experts because they're putting in 8 hours a day. Their seat time will always exceed yours. So you have to genuinely enjoy the HR side. And the HR side is really hard. If you don't like dealing with people's personal trauma, and I do not say that lightly, when I was a young manager, someone told me somebody's parent is always going to have cancer. That is what being a manager is. Somebody's always going to want to quit or need to be fired or have a parent with cancer. And I was like, I've been a director for 2 minutes. This is terrible. It is horrible and true. And I don't say that even with a little bit of jokiness. It is a hard job. You have to be ready to support people. You have to be ready to do hard things. It is not deterministic or binary numbers. It is hard and squishy. And you have to do the coursework, read the books, listen to the podcasts, train, go to your HR training. It's hard. So if that does not sound fun to you, that is not for you. And a lot of people say like the only way up is to manage people. Thankfully, I don't think that is as true as it used to be. It is a way up and can feel like a quote, easy way up. If you do not enjoy people, do not do it.
Okay, John, I feel like you have to weigh in now.
My perspective is as a first-time manager, and I think that everything that you just said, Amy, like really resonates with me. And in some ways, it might even be more difficult for someone who is a high-achieving individual contributor to step into that role because, you know, their perspective is going to be, well, it's very easy to say, I don't know why you're not just doing what I did.
Yes. Or to compete with the people reporting to you, which is it sets up a really bad dynamic, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And as you said, accepting that you are not going to be the expert or as good as they are very, very quickly because your time is going to be consumed by other things.
It's a shift.
Yeah. I was at a sales kickoff recently, and they were doing a session about the new technology and the new stuff that we're releasing, and they told us technical managers, by the way, you're not going to that session. You're going to a session on how to be a better technical manager. And I went, oh man, this is the job.
And it's uncomfortable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that is not the most important thing for me to know.
It's actually really ties into it is truly putting something down to pick something up, because I've had player coach roles and it's really hard. That is essentially a job and a half if you have a very big team. And you really do have to make very strategic choices about, do you do thing A or thing B? Because you cannot do it all. You cannot. Every company is a little bit different in terms of the expectations, but I really kind of love that they said for you to help you kind of really redirect. I kind of love that was like, this is your track right now. It forces you to think differently and get those kind of moments where, I mean, of course you would love to put hands on keyboard, but ...
That's not the job.
No. No. And we had more than one, we had several of these conversations during the Geek Whisperer days. And I applaud folks who tried management and decided they genuinely got more joy in their life from not managing people. And I think that's okay too. I know plenty of people with successful career trajectories on every single combination of that. People who manage people who manage people and stepped out of it, people who never want to manage people and are very open about it. I applaud a world we live in where all of those ways of being can be celebrated. So yeah, circling all the way back, when I first became a manager, I was terrified and did what I always do, which is admit it and go get help immediately. So I told people I didn't know what I was doing and was fortunate enough to have people kind enough to be like, to save me from just raw, like, ignorance. So I think if you are new, go get help. Don't assume you're a quote unquote natural. Find a mentor, read a book, do like literally everything. Even if you think you only learn one way, kind of do everything, because it's hard. It's very hard. And also you're going to make mistakes. I think that's the other thing, is like, you're going to have to forgive yourself. And I've had the fortune of running a few just incredible teams, and teams that give you grace to fail and grow with them is such a gift. So the number one thing you can do is build trust and say what you know and say what you don't know. And that story from Solid Fire, when I inherited a team, I'd never run field marketing. They absolutely knew more than I did and still do. And I had no budget. So the budget had gotten cut. I'd inherited a team and I had to show up at my first meeting to be like, hi, you know more than me and I have no budget. But what I do have is a lot of attitude. I will always elevate your work. I will take barriers out of your way, and you can be very straight with me because there have been kind of bumpy road, and trust will be the thing that will pull you through. So from the flip side, if you decide you do this and you get all in, build trust and tell the truth with that team and encourage them to trust each other. And if people aren't ready to be in that boat rowing along with you, then help them find the next opportunity.
Did you have to learn how to have one-on-ones with your employees under your care once you became a manager, or was that a bit more natural because of some of the other things you had done from an interviewing perspective?
If I'm honest, I wanted to hide from it.
Oh, okay.
The funny thing is, I think I'm not alone in that. I have seen new and inexperienced managers not kind of understand the power of the one-on-one. I am religious about them now. We did a Geek Whisperers episode with Dom Delfino, and I know we had some show notes and asked me what my top 3 episodes of Geek Whisperers, and of course I can't pick amongst my favorites, but I will tell you, one of the episodes we get asked about probably more than any others are the ones with Dom.
Those are great episodes.
Dom is a mentor of mine, and I'm very proud of the work we did because Dom is an incredible mentor, and it was using a platform to kind of share how he thinks with the world. One thing about getting a mentor like Dom or any good mentor is they're going to tell you things you don't want to hear, probably immediately. Because I thought I was smart and clever and knew the things. I mean, I knew I didn't know field marketing, but I thought somehow being a good human and having good sense was going to save me. And he's like, Amy, what are you doing? And I was like, I have 7 direct reports. I can't. He's like, it's the most important thing you can be doing. He goes, do not talk to me again until you have one-on-ones on the calendar with them. Like, it was like, what is wrong with you? And he's like, I have way more than that. Don't even. And he was right. Prioritize it. If you prioritize your one-on-ones with your people, other things will take care of themselves. You'll figure the rest out. I highly recommend the Manager podcast series for people who are just getting started. My friend and mentor, Erin Delp, is a huge fan, and Sarah Vella. So it comes highly recommended from folks you know in the industry. These are great. The Manager Tools podcast, I guess it's called. And they talk about some of the basics. And I don't care if you think you know everything. Like, it is a great refresher course because the basics are the basics and the classics for a reason. So yes, I am a story of what not to do. Do not run from your one-on-ones. They will catch you.
It's funny that that same teacher that I referenced earlier, who was so great at analogies, he asked me what I wanted to do to progress. And I talked about, advanced techniques and the flourishes. And he's like, no. You need to do your basics better. Like you have to master your basics. That's helped me everywhere I've gone. That Manager Tools podcast is a great podcast. I'll have to refresh. I think it's one of the few memberships that I actually pay for on the internet. And I know some first-time managers who have been promoted recently. I'll have to go and re-recommend that to them.
I love that. And sort of circling back to the conversation about if people are finding themselves between things, if you were a manager of people before, or if it's something you want to move into, train for the job you want next, right? That would be a great use of time. You don't have to have a team to train for the team you want to manage. Go in there and listen to it and get yourself ready. So when the opportunity finds you, you're ready for it.
You already have a structure. And I think that same group has another parallel podcast that they run called Career Tools. And they have an entire section on, how to redo your resume, how to go out and find a job, how to figure out the type of job that you want to have and those kinds of things. So highly recommend. We'll put some links in the show notes.
Awesome.
Amy, as we're wrapping up here, maybe you could close us out by giving us a recommendation. Maybe looking back at your career, tell us about the thing that you would not do again.
Oh boy. I set myself up for that one, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
For the listeners who haven't listened to the Geek Whisperers, that was our classic closing question. So I'm such a positive person, but I learned through negative space. The old FedEx logo I like to refer to, right? It's the negative space where you see the arrow. It's just how my brain works. So what is something in career I would not do again? Don't move for the title.
Like relocate or change jobs or both?
Anything. Do not be lured by the appeal of a title. The lesson I think all of us have to learn over and over again, and something I teach and have to point fingers back at myself. Just because you can do something does not mean that you should do something. Sometimes we want to compete with ourselves. And again, many people in our industry are super achievers, the A+ kids, the extra credit kids. Just because you can does not mean you should. Time, space, and distance have given me the ability to pull back. There's a couple times where I made moves that, I didn't scrape the surface hard enough and kind of look carefully enough. And I had to do a lot of work to kind of find my space. And there are other times where I did take that pause and really trusted my gut. And if something sounded too good to be true, it probably is. One of the things that's a cheap and easy sell, and again, particularly in this time where things are so chaotic, can be the lure of a high-flying title. And I would say the corollary is probably don't ignore what may sound like a title that's quote unquote beneath you, right? Set that aside and really look at the work you're doing every day and the people you're doing it with and the people you're reporting to. So if you get glamored, the title is the easiest thing in the world to change. We change it in Workday at the flip of a coin. You can give yourself your own LinkedIn title. Your sense of achievement and accomplishment you will not be made whole by that title. And if you take on something that you just don't like, just because you can. And I always use this analogy. I cook all the time. I'm a really good cook. And once more, my kids to the rescue. They call it the moody cafe. Because when I'm exhausted and tired, your mood goes into your food, in my opinion. And nobody wants to eat at that particular moody cafe, although they're convinced it'd be a brilliant pop-up, because I just wouldn't open when I was not in the mood. They're all about it. So maybe when I retire from this round, that's what I'll do. But just because I can cook like that does not mean that I should, because I have some questions about the viability of the moody cafe. And apply that to your titles when you're out there. Don't ignore or overlook something that you think's beneath you, and don't get lured by the glamour of something that sounds amazing.
It's interesting perspective. Career progression isn't the only thing in the world. I'll recontextualize that and say, you've been offered or you have the opportunity to do something that you view as progression. Is progression even the right thing right now for you? You need to assess, is this something that you should do? Have you already spent all your tokens?
That's right. And progression can mean what you would like it to mean. Because ask yourself, is that title for you or to impress somebody or ... You said it beautifully in terms of consider how many tokens you've got and consider what makes you happy and really fulfills you. Look at the work, look at the people, look at the management chain. The title is the most fluid thing of all of it.
And you may have to lay something down to do everything you just said.
That's right.
I love it. Amy Lewis, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We really appreciate it. Where can people find you and follow up on this conversation?
Secretly, I lurk in my former identity as Comms Ninja on the artist formerly known as Twitter. I refuse to say the other name. I'm on Threads under my less secret identity. I have an identity crisis. When I'm on stage, I'm Comms Ninja. When I'm Amy Lewis, I'm Amy Lewi, which is a joke because Amy Lewis is always taken. And so it's the plural. And I think it's hilarious.
That's great.
That's back to me. Why you don't sit next to me at any formal service. Just let the word go out. I'm also on LinkedIn. So I would really be happy to connect with anybody out there if I can offer you a good pass in the soccer pitch analogy. If I can pass you the ball in any way, I would love to set you up.
That's awesome.
Amy, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Listening back again, I'm just not sure that once a Geek Whisperer describes Amy Lewis accurately. I think still a Geek Whisperer would be more appropriate. In a lot of ways, I'm kind of a digital pack rat and don't delete things very often. And I realized while editing this episode that I still had some old episodes of the Geek Whisperers downloaded to my phone, so I listened to them before publishing this. And I have to agree with what Amy said. I mean, not only was the show one of my favorite podcasts of all time, but Amy, John, and Matt had a chemistry that worked really well together in the way they talked about things, the way they interviewed their guests, and the way they made you feel like you were in that discussion with them and part of their community. And they were kind enough to welcome me into a technical community that I was very new to at the time when I discovered their show. So I'll always appreciate that. And did you hear what Amy said? We did what we hoped to do, create a body of work that we hoped would serve a community we really loved and were proud to be a part of. That body of work, all those episodes, all those discussions, and picking out the great advice from people they interviewed, that led to new opportunities for Amy, Matt, and John. And it made me think to ask you, What is that body of work that makes you stand out as an individual, as someone an employer would want to hire? Maybe it's not a podcast. Maybe it's not a blog. Maybe it's not a video series you did. But how are you making an impact either inside your company or outside your company? It may not be something you even get paid to do, but the fact that you're doing it and serving someone else other than yourself, it's much like this concept of otherish giving that Adam Grant talks about in the book Give and Take. Great read if you've never read it. That's what building a body of work reminds me of. So I hope that you'll keep documenting your accomplishments, the things you do in your hobbies, volunteer efforts, community service work. All of that stuff can help you build your body of work. And it allows people, assuming it's publicly accessible in some way, at least the documentation of it, it allows people to see a little bit of who you are, even before they get to talk to you and meet you. And just remember, when you're working on a project or something you've worked on for a long time, things do have an endpoint. And as Amy said, being intentional means you may have to weigh what's happening in your life and the circumstances that you're in. How has your work changed? How have other things in your life changed? It might be time to put that thing down so that you can pick something else up, whatever that is. Max Cannon Alexander talked about a form of this in episode 286. He starts to think about how he can hand a project off before he even starts it. You may not necessarily be thinking about it that early, but I would say you shouldn't be afraid of reevaluating every so often whether you need to put something down so you can pick something up. And if you are someone out there who's hurting and has been impacted by a layoff, Amy had some great advice on acknowledging that it's really terrible. If you're looking for more stories, more guidance specifically about layoffs, we created a layoff resources page at nerd-journey.com/layoff resources, one word, nerd-journey.com/layoff resources, an aggregated list of our most impactful, practical advice-infused conversations focused on layoffs from the Nerd Journey podcast. May it be an encouragement to you. Make sure you check out Amy's newest creative venture, the Unicorns in the Break Room podcast that she's doing with co-host Sarah Vella, all focused on figuring out corporate life. Definitely go check it out. Be sure and give them a rating and subscribe. And if you enjoyed this discussion with Amy, we'd appreciate it if you'd rate us 5 stars, leave a review, and share what you found most helpful. We'll see you next time.
Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White at VJourneyman, for Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_, signing off.
Adios.